Gumption, defined as initiative, aggressiveness, resourcefulness, courage, spunk, guts, common sense, and shrewdness. Welcome to the podcast. This is Stories of Gumption with your host, Ryan Lee. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Stories of Gumption podcast. This is your host, Ryan Lee, and we are having conversations with entrepreneurs, creative thinkers, and, in my opinion, really, really impressive people. As you know, we have a couple sponsors to the podcast. The first one, Open Gate Farmstead. They're a stone's throw away from the mighty Ausable River. Open Gate Farmstead is a first-generation farm specializing in free-range poultry, pasture-raised pork, and seasonal produce. The farm is run using a simple principle. Happy animals make the healthiest and tastiest product. I love that. Such a good little slogan. So if you're interested in learning a little more about Open Gate Farmstead, check them out on YouTube. They have a great YouTube page showing all the stories of the animals and the family at Open Gate Farmstead. They're also on Facebook and Instagram. Check them out. Great group of people and doing great things with the farm to table movement. And for a special offer to Gumption listeners, they're taking $1 off your first order of eggs. I order their eggs. I actually got some today from Matt Craig, one of the owners, and they're phenomenal. So check them out. Maybe they even have some duck eggs for you. The duck eggs are really good. Those are the ones that, as we've articulated before in previous podcast episodes, they're the ones that are almost twice as big as a chicken egg, and they taste like the chicken basically just ate butter its whole life. So it's phenomenal. Open Gate Farmstead, check them out. We are also sponsored by Kavanaugh Realty. Joey and Galen Trombley, two great dudes in the North Country doing great things for the North Country. Hashtag local matters. I have a personal story I want to say about Galen Trombley, but first, I'd be remiss if I didn't say this area, as I've said it before, is blessed to have so many great real estate brokers and agents making our community move forward, and really appreciate every agent and broker in our region. We're blessed to have so many people working so hard in that industry. Our personal experience with Galen Trombley was phenomenal. He stayed up late the night we wanted to make our offer while he was on vacation, and because of him busting after hours on his vacation, we got an offer in. The next morning, there was a second offer, but we secured our house. And here we are sitting in the Gumption studio. So thanks, Galen Trombley and Kavanaugh Realty. You do great things, and thank you for the sponsorship. Today, oh man, what a treat. We have episode 11 with an incredibly gumptious individual, good friend, and I hold her in very high regard. She is currently an employee development manager at the UVM Health Network, Champlain Valley's Physicians Hospital. She's certified in Myers-Briggs. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Proud mother of one and growing, 1.5, I'll say. Proud stepmom, and recently just crushed it and got her master's degree. So we'll talk about that too. But welcome to the podcast, Maria Latinville.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And like I said, you're very gumptious. I hold you in very high regard.
Thank you.
And I'm happy to and excited to have a conversation with you today.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
But for the listeners, bring us back. So you mentioned to me before the podcast, you grew up in New Jersey.
Yep.
And graduated high school and
Peaced out. Yeah, growing up in Jersey was great. I grew up in northern Jersey, so real close to New York City, and that was a really great experience. But I knew that I wasn't a city girl deep down in my heart, so As soon as I graduated from high school, I went off to Castleton State College for 2 years. And he said, there's got to be more to life than beer pong and keg stands. I need to do more with myself. So I transferred back to a school in New Jersey, a really great state college, William Patterson. And that's ultimately where I graduated from with my undergrad. But I spent my last year of college out in San Jose State University in California as part of a student exchange program.
Oh, wow.
Which I don't think a lot of people know that you can do, actually, like a national student exchange. Like people think like international.
Yeah,
You know,
that's
when you
wicked
go
cool.
for
I
a
mean,
student
I
exchange?
studied abroad in Australia for a semester, but I didn't
Very
even
cool.
know that was a thing.
Yeah, I didn't either.
That's wicked cool. So it took you to the West Coast.
Yeah, it did. It was my ticket back or out west. I claim to be a gypsy. I think it's part of my DNA, and it was great. It was a really great experience. I wound up graduating from college and being able to stay out west and start my career. So I spent a couple years in Northern California and a couple more years in Reno, Nevada, and all of the jobs that I had at the time really allowed me to travel a lot because I lived out of a suitcase, literally. But it was a really great experience.
Very cool. Very cool. And so at one point, so you graduate and then you tell me where you went after that.
So my undergrad is in business administration and marketing. And so I had this fantasy idea of working in like the ad agency world and being around a bunch of creative people. And I did. I landed in a wonderful locally owned advertising agency in San Jose, California. And I spent a couple years working there. I started off actually as a temp.
Oh,
So
wow.
I used my administrative background to get a job working at the front desk. And then eventually I got to be able to move into another position. But it was such a great way to gain exposure and experience in the ad agency world.
Nice.
So it was a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
Nice. Nice. And so at some point you continued traveling or you made it back to the East Coast. Tell me about that.
So let's see. What jobs made me travel a lot? So actually, when I moved to Reno, I worked for an eating disorder treatment program. So I worked in behavioral health, and I was a road warrior with that job. Traveled a lot all over the country. It was funny. Like I would call my parents and they'd be like, "Where are you today?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm in a different time zone. I'm in Texas today, or I'm in Washington."
Oh, wow.
So, and it was a great experience, but it was high burnout. And then I eventually got a job with Charter Communications, which is now Spectrum.
Spectrum.
Yeah. At the
The
time,
provider of my internet. Yes, I know Spectrum.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
So Charter was my ticket back east.
Nice. And before the podcast, we were talking. I'd be remiss in not mentioning this because I'm super interested. But before the podcast, you said you ran a marathon while you were out in Reno.
I did. Well, I trained in Reno, but I ran the San Francisco Marathon.
Wow. Okay.
Which was really cool.
For the listeners out there who've heard me go off on long distance running, I apologize, but I'm interested. I'm going to ask Maria all about her experience now for the next few minutes. So tell me about that. What made you want to run a marathon?
Let's see. So running is one of those things that's really therapeutic when your life is sort of crazy. And young, single, 20-something, living out west with little family around and little network of people. There was that component. Running felt incredibly therapeutic. It was a healthy coping thing. And then there was the personal challenge thing. I love a good personal challenge. And if you say personal challenge, it's different than competition.
Right.
Like I'm not into things that compete with other people. Like I'm into things that I compete against myself.
Right.
And running is definitely one of those things. And I had I have a really great girlfriend who's out there, and the two of us became like little running buddies together. And so we supported one another, and we ran a few half marathons and other things together. And it was kind of like, hey, we just ran a half. What if we just doubled it?
Oh,
What if we just let's,
ugh.
what if we just did this? I don't know. So we sort of pushed each other, and she was like, "How about the San Francisco Marathon?" And I was like, "Okay." I don't recommend the San Francisco as your first marathon because there's a lot of hills. So
Okay.
but it was beautiful and it was amazing, and I wouldn't change it. So
Yeah. I can remember running my first half marathon. Probably, actually, I think I saw a reminder pop up on Facebook, like, "Oh, 5 years ago you did."
oh yeah,
I remember crossing that finish line at the Plattsburgh half and being like,
half.
half,
Yes.
13.1,
Right.
not 26.2, 13.
Right.
Going, yeah, I'm not doing that again.
Imagine
I'm not
that you
starting
just-
over.
Yep. You would have to do this whole thing
Oh,
all
God.
over again.
Yeah, here I go. I'm considering a full now. She's she listeners know this. She is Superwoman, and she has completed a full, and she's talking me into another one. So if the podcast keeps going, you know I either quit or I survived it. Right?
You will survive.
Speaking of marathons, though, you didn't do just one.
I did too.
You did two.
Right. And I'm like, why did I do that?
So not only did you cross the finish line after 26.2, and you were like, "Oh, I'm going to do another one." Which one did you do?
I did the Boston.
You did the Boston.
Yeah.
That's
That
awesome.
was a really cool experience. Just to be clear, I didn't do it as a qualified runner. I did it as I did it for a nonprofit, and I raised money
Still.
for it. So that was kind of like my ticket in.
Mm-hmm.
But oh my gosh, if you have ever been even a spectator at that race, that community, all those communities along the route, they really come out and show up and support those runners. It's such a great race.
That must be so cool.
Mm-hmm.
And which year did you do it?
I'm blanking on the actual calendar year now,
Okay.
but it was the year before the actual bombing.
Okay.
And it
Okay.
was the year that they had the record heat.
Oof.
Like we had this crazy heat wave that came through, and they were actually deferring. They were trying to get runners to defer to the next year because they were so concerned about heat stroke and runners
Wow.
putting themselves in really risky situations because nobody's heat trained at
Yeah.
that point in the year. It's in the
Yeah.
early spring, and that's exactly what happened. I mean, I saw runners heat stroked along the way, and they had a tremendous amount of healthcare EMT support along the whole raceway. They had little
Wow.
like huts and things set up. So it was pretty wild. They were not kidding when they were like, really consider running this next year.
And of course, you were just like, "I'm doing it."
I wasn't wasting all that training.
Oh my gosh! Yeah.
You know what it takes to train and prepare for a race.
We're at what is it? It's May 1st.
Okay.
The race today's May 1st, and our race is in August 6th, I think. So we're right at that like 12-mile phase where you're basically running a half marathon or almost just because on the weekend with nobody cheering for you.
Right. Right.
So this is the breaking point. We'll see how it goes, but yeah. Well, we're signed up for the first ever half marathon in Alexandria Bay.
Ooh.
I found out it's a brand new race, Bolt Castle and all that out there. So that'll
wow.
be fun.
That's awesome.
And hopefully it goes well. But anyhow, I love talking about that now because it keeps me jacked up. Hopefully
It is such a. I definitely miss it. I've hung up my runner shoes and I do CrossFit, and I've been doing CrossFit for over 6 years now, and I find that that's a much more gentler on my joints, and
it's
been great.
And shout out to CrossFit. I mean, I was doing CrossFit with Lauren pretty regularly for quite a while, and we've fallen out of it. But of the 2 Plattsburgh half marathons I ran, the better time that I had was after I'd been doing a bunch of CrossFit.
Yep.
Versus just running.
I wish that I was doing CrossFit while I was training.
Oh man.
For both of those marathons. It would have been a complete difference.
Totally different. Totally different mental training, but also like your strength is just in a totally different place.
Yes. I mean, that muscle development and that weightlifting component is so critical, and you really don't realize it. You think, I'm a long distance runner, I'm healthy. Like in some ways you are really healthy, but in other ways that weight training piece is so important.
Yep. And you burn more calories the more muscle you have. Mm-hmm. Just resting calories, caloric burn.
Yeah.
So, it's kind of, people think, oh, I got to just cardio this out. But really, if you actually put more muscle on your body, you'll burn more calories just sitting at your desk.
Right. I could eat all day long.
Not necessarily. I wish it was that. I love Reese cups, but yeah. So that's great. Okay, so you run 2 marathons. No big deal. There's no gumption in that's for sure. And then you start working for Spectrum, not Spectrum at the time, but and you come back. I'm not sure the timing of all of this, but you're working for Spectrum, and you're in which state now?
So I wind up in Worcester, Massachusetts.
Okay.
Because I'm like, hey, it's close to New Jersey. I can drive and see my family. And my job in Reno and in Massachusetts was as a regional marketing support for the charter business sales teams. Or enterprise sales, whatever people are referring to it. But so that's actually how my husband and I, Zach Latinville, that's how we connected, because he was an enterprise or charter business sales rep based out of Plattsburgh, covering the Northeast, and I was based in Worcester, Mass. But our worlds connected in the working world. So
nice.
We were the inter-office scandalous romance.
That's awesome. Okay. So you met, but he was living in Plattsburgh, traveling all over. You were living in Worcester. Wow. I can't.
Worcester.
I don't ask me to ever do that again.
I've had many lessons on it. When I moved there, they're like, listen, Marie. I got called Maria, like all kinds.
Right. Because if it ends with an A, you have to put an R sound at the end.
Maria. It's Worcester.
Yeah. Nice. No, okay. So that's long distance.
Yeah. We did long distance for a year.
Wow. And eventually, it comes down to you coming here to Plattsburgh, New York.
Yep.
New Jersey girl coming up to Plattsburgh, New York, right. And finding it as home.
Watch out, North Country.
Yeah.
Here comes
nice.
the thunder.
and so through this whole time, you are a marketing guru.
Yeah. So the bulk of my experience professionally has been in strategic marketing.
Okay.
Yeah. So moving up to Plattsburgh, I mean, there was a lot, the Northeast here, especially this region, there are a lot of similarities to the Northwest. And so I did get to spend a lot of time going through Washington and Oregon and Northern California, and not like just Seattle and Portland, but more kind of out there areas that you wouldn't think to normally go to, like the western or the eastern part of Washington State. It's almost like its own little Napa Valley up there. Its own little wine country. And there's a lot of like desert and mountainy landscape, and it's just very different and very beautiful. And so in a lot of ways, this Plattsburgh North Country area reminded me of certain pockets of the Northwest. And I was like, God, it's really beautiful up there.
Nice.
So there were certain things that were appealing. And there is something that is really appealing about being in a smaller town, smaller area.
Yep.
And my husband has a son. And so that was of high importance on the list. I wouldn't ever pull Zach away from the North Country or away from his son. And so we knew that the only way that Zach and I were going to work is if I moved up to Plattsburgh. So that's what I chose to do.
And so that scandalous office romance turned into a marriage, and you moved on to a different job in marketing, and here you are in Plattsburgh. And I think when you and I first met, you were heavily active in Adirondack Young Professionals, ADKY. You were their marketing. Keep with the marketing theme. Marketing guru. You helped design the website that, I mean, up until I think this year, stood firm for us. It's like our staple for a long time. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was. I love to still use the creative side of my brain, and there's young professionals groups. There's always a part that is near and dear to my heart. When I lived out on the West Coast too, I connected with a young professionals group that was out there as well. And it was such a great way to network and meet people. And the older you get, when you live places that you didn't grow up in, it's really hard to get to know people. And a young professionals organization is such a fantastic way, not just to meet, not just to do professional networking, but make some personal connections and build bridges in a lot of ways. So when I moved to this area, that was kind of like one of the first things that I did was like, okay, there's got to be a young professionals group here, and how do I get involved?
Yeah.
So it was a really great experience. I got to meet Hannah and
Yep.
you and a lot of other folks. And so, yeah, I was able to do that marketing support piece. And then I just hit a point in my career where I was just burnt. I was burnt. I was done. I knew that I love to think creatively and innovatively and use that side of my brain, but I needed a new challenge, or there was something like a little birdie chirping on my shoulder, like, you really love training and development.
Training and development.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Nice.
I started to pay attention to some other reoccurring themes within my career, and decided to make a leap and change that career 3.5 years ago now.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. And that takes you to where you are today at CVPH, part of the UVM Health Network.
Yeah, absolutely.
Employee Development Manager. Tell me about that. Tell me about that job.
So I started at CVPH as an employee development specialist, and in that role, I have historically been supporting our employees in accessing the Education Funds program. I do a lot of support work behind the scenes for our new employee orientation, facilitate other training and development programs, and a whole multitude of things. I'm actually still using my marketing experience because I'm sort of the learning and development marketing person, if you will. We joke about it. I will promote the learning and development program offerings internally to our employees. So I'm still doing newsletter work. I'm still
nice.
doing a lot of so that still keeps that creative side of my brain pretty happy. My role has evolved and changed. Actually, last October, I was promoted to employee development manager. And so I'm still juggling both responsibilities. We're in the process of hiring an HR assistant to take on some of those tasks that I have been supporting. So my role will evolve and move forward once some of those other things come off my plate. But where I am headed is into more of a career counselor, or we joke and say that I'm a guidance counselor for our CVPH employees. And that's really where I want to be. I want to be helping our employees grow within the organization, whether that be growing within their current role or helping them grow into a future role within the organization. The network is moving all of the facilities that are part of the network into a direction of how can we collaborate more? How can we work smarter, not harder? How can we create a sort of shared services concept? And so what I would love to focus on, and my role will be evolving more into, is focusing on succession planning, career growth, and efforts to support retention and reducing turnover for our organization.
That's huge.
So, yeah.
Wow, that's awesome.
Of fun stuff.
That's a big deal though. And especially you think about, I mean, I don't know the statistics, but I would assume one of the higher reasons someone leaves a role is they no longer see the advancement opportunity in that role.
Absolutely. I think everybody experiences that at some point in their career.
Yeah.
They feel like there's a glass ceiling over my head, or that's it. Like, I've grown as far as I can grow. And my job is to help people see beyond that.
And so tell me this, if someone comes to you, within CVPH and needs advice on that seems like a tricky tricky balance to play, because you can't promise anything to anybody, but
Nope.
you have to give them the professional coaching they need to make the best choice for them.
So I have so many different kinds of conversations with employees. It really depends on where they're at.
Yeah.
And there's never a guarantee or promise of a promotion. My job is to help employees understand, though, that it is their job to own their career growth, come up with strategies and a path that's going to help them move into the next step or phase of their career. So we'll see, I see the gamut, right? I mean, I've got associate level RNs who want to pursue a bachelor's degree. So their path is a little bit more clear, or maybe they eventually want to go for that advanced practice degree. They want to become a nurse practitioner or a physician assistant, or maybe there's that environmental service worker who's an entry level position. They're like, I love this organization. I want to be here forever. I don't care. I just want to grow.
Wow.
So like, okay, let's talk about that. Like, what are your strengths? What gives you joy? What gives you energy? Like, instead of thinking about filling job descriptions, let's start thinking about how can our employees think about what are my strengths and what are some needs within the organization, and how can I apply my strengths to fit these needs?
That's interesting. It reminds me of a whiteboard in the office of my wife's office at SUNY Plattsburgh that says, the grass is always greener where you water it.
Yep.
And I'm simplifying what you just said, but it sounds like you're showing options and pathways for how employees can water the grass.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So what kind of things can you say, like typical, like, samples of like conversations that you have? Or
so what would be a common example? Some things that I tend to hear, like I was saying, I know I want to grow, but I don't know how.
Yeah.
I think that's probably the biggest theme that I hear is, I know I want this growth, but I feel X, Y, and Z obstacles, or I feel challenges, or people are almost scared to say what they want out loud. And that I have experienced a lot.
Interesting.
Like, it's really gutsy to say, I really want to go for a master's degree, or I want to one day, imagine you're just starting off your career and you're like, you know what? I want to be a neurosurgeon, or I want to be a physician's assistant. That seems like a really far off, lofty goal when you're just starting at baseline, right? But you have to start by saying those things out loud. Visualization and admitting those things that you want is a really powerful and important step to any sort of growth, not just career growth, but just growth in general.
Yeah.
And I think this is a basic 101 function of growth that most people tend to cut out altogether, because it's like so scary to say and admit what it is that you actually want.
Why do you think we have such a hard time admitting, like saying like publicly like that what we want? Do you think it's like a societal pressure? It's a psychology piece? I mean, I don't know.
There's so many pieces to
it.
I think
everybody's different. Yeah.
Fear, doubt, negativity. If you think about, it's funny, a class that I am actually facilitating tomorrow morning and that I speak to quite a bit is human beings are designed and built for survival. So some of our basic function is to fight or flight, right? We're built for, like if we were out in the wilderness and we had to survive and run away from predators, for example, our bodies physiologically are designed for fight or flight. And so when we're put into stressful situations, or when we're, feeling like stakes are high, our bodies are doing this fight or flight thing without us really realizing it. We experience triggers around us, which create behaviors. And So to say, for example, like one of my goals, which is really scary for me to say out loud, is I would love to do a TED Talk one day. That's a really scary goal, right? There's a lot of vulnerability. There's a
Yeah.
lot of putting yourself out there. There's a lot of like, oh my God, I'd have to like put my application in. There's a lot of things that I'd have to do to really make this happen. And in the meanwhile, you're fighting off this fear and this doubt and, oh my God, what would I even talk about? And who would listen to me? And right, there's all these things that stop us. But all it start like, you don't have to worry about that fear and doubt thing. It's like, shut up, fear and doubt. Just say, I want to do a TED Talk. Start there.
You don't
That's
have to know how.
You don't have to know the how. You don't have to worry about all that. If you just keep saying what it is that you actually want, your life will eventually get there.
That's gold.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like, boom, my mind just blown.
Boom.
But no, you think about it, like I honestly, I go back to running.
Mm-hmm.
I've mentioned it a couple times on the podcast, but other than that, I've been pretty, like, around family, around friends, I've been pretty quiet about the whole marathon training thing.
Why?
Because
I'm going to put you on the spot, Ryan.
This is good therapy. Because I'm scared of failing. I'm scared of telling people that I'm going to go run a marathon. But if I don't end up doing it, but I never told anybody that I wanted it, it's okay. But if I tell everybody that I want to run a marathon, and then in the back of my head, I'm worried, what if I don't do it? I'm going to like, oh, there goes Ryan again, saying he's going to, the second time around, he's tried this before.
It gives you you're like, I'm off the hook. Right?
I'm off the hook.
Do this.
It's okay if I don't do it.
So it depends on how you're motivated.
Yeah.
So if you feel like you're self-motivated enough to take that approach, great. That's cool. That totally works. By telling other people around you what you're doing, that increases accountability because now you have little accountability buddies. So like my master's degree, for example, I intentionally chose to share my journey on Facebook, not because I wanted to be like, oh, look at me, I'm getting my master's. That's not the validation I was looking for.
Right.
I was actually seeking encouragement and support, but most importantly, accountability. Because if I was putting myself out there and telling people that I'm working on this master's thing, I could not finish it. Like that was not even a choice.
Yeah.
So for me, that was actually an important piece of accountability. So it depends on what motivates you.
Yeah. Let's talk about that because that's an interesting segue from what we're talking about here. Like the other piece of setting goals and trying to conquer them when life is just crazy sometimes. And I feel like, from talking before the podcast, you've conquered a lot, especially with the master's degree, with life being crazy. Tell me about that.
So let's see. My daughter was 8 months old and I said, hey, I'm going to go back to school. And my husband's like, okay, if you really want to do this, I support you. The universe was genuinely serving it up to me on a golden platter, considering my job function at CVPH. And I'm actually a point of contact for the schools that we have network partnerships with.
Oh, wow.
So there's a list of schools that provide CVPH or UVM Health Network employees, not just CVPH, but the whole network. If you're an employee anywhere within the network, we have this list of schools that will provide our employees with tuition discounts.
Wow.
And they even extend, some of those schools extend those discounts to even spouses or family members. So the organization just really embraces lifelong learning and is so supportive in a lot of ways, but I digress. The point is the job function I was in, the resources that I had right at my fingertips.
Yeah.
It was like the universe screaming, look, there's no perfect time to go back to school. Like there is no perfect time. So if you sit around waiting for it, it's not going to happen. So I decided to just take that leap, put in my application, and I'm so grateful that I just took that leap of faith and did it. It was not easy because, like I said, my daughter was 8 months old when I started. We were still breastfeeding.
Mm-hmm.
I was still pumping at least 3 times a day at work. And for the mamas out there who understand that breastfeeding journey and what that really feels like, to try to build in pumping time to your day that's already jam-packed with meetings and crazy schedule and deadlines, you just somehow figure it out. And I would get home from work. I still figured out how to squeeze CrossFit in there. Thankfully, I have a very supportive and encouraging husband, and he's a great partner as far as he's just a great partner, but he's been great with juggling Rosie and just the household responsibilities in life. And without that, I don't know that I would have been able to get through it. So, it's like you get home from work and it's just like you get this short little window with your baby. You nurse her to death.
Yep.
You put her to bed. You pray that she sleeps. I was not blessed with a baby who likes to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
So she did a lot of cluster feeding and not a lot of sleeping. And there were literally times where I was like a human pacifier. And, but you know what? It's like you just do what you have to do.
Yeah.
And I would stay up late doing my homework, or on the weekends, try to squeak it in however I could. I really tried to do my schoolwork at nighttime. That's really like my focus time. But life has been nuts for the last 20 months or however long it took. But it's been amazing. I mean, it's been such an amazing journey. And what I have learned throughout this program has not just helped me professionally, but it's also been super beneficial personally as well.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's got to be such a hard thing to decide. I mean, and I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who are thinking, man, I would love to do that. Like what, I mean, you said it was served to you on a silver platter, golden platter.
Yeah.
An amazing platinum platter.
I mean, the universe was like, if you don't do this, you're a ding dong.
Yeah. But like, what do you say as someone who's an expert and trained in this now? If I came to you and I said, I think I want to go back to school, but I don't know if I'm ready. How do I make that decision?
So I would talk through, personally, like what's going on in your personal life that you can carve out time for this. I want to be very clear. There's people look at like, wow, you did so much. Please know that there's a whole lot of other things that weren't happening in my life while this is going on, right? So I've got a messy house. I've got meal preps were like as basic as it gets.
Yep.
There's a lot of self-care out the window, never mind that. You're in survival mode and you're really doing the best that you can. I think you have to look at your priorities and decide what can be put on hold temporarily for a little segment of your life, and also evaluate your current life, right? What do you keep doing? What do you stop doing? What do you try new? And I think what I've also learned too is how much time is unproductive time. How much time are we spending that is really unproductive?
Yeah.
And I have learned quickly that, you know what, even with a kid and all these other things that I can come up with as excuses as to why I can't make a degree happen. But the reality is there's a ton of unproductive time that I was able to chop out.
That's impressive though. And I mean, it certainly, we've already said this, but it certainly couldn't have been easy. So you now have this impressive degree and you're going to be, what was the joke? The guidance counselor?
I've been acting as the guidance counselor, so I'm going to continue to do that, but also develop further. So my degree is in organizational development. And so now it's transfer of knowledge time and taking all this great degree knowledge that I learned and actually putting it into action and applying it to the workplace.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Thanks.
So you spend how many years in strategic marketing?
12 plus.
12 plus years in strategic marketing from the limited years that I saw you working locally in strategic marketing, you were crushing it. And,
Thanks.
You decided that you needed a switch. Let's talk about that. I think we've talked a little bit about it, but just sort of this dynamic of when it's right to switch careers. Because I'm sure there's a lot of listeners who are, especially maybe the listeners in their 20s, who are going, have I found the right fit? For you, how did you know you needed to leave? And then how did you know you found the right fit?
Yeah, those are great questions. First of all, if you're in your 20s and you're like, I found the one, kudos to you, because you are the minority.
Yeah.
I'm not to say that doesn't exist, but I spent 12 plus years in strategic marketing, and like I said, I've got this creative side of my brain that I genuinely love to tap into and I love to use. But creativity, we all have creativity within us. It's how do we get to flex that muscle, and how do we get to use it? And as I sort of alluded to earlier, a few common themes were popping up within my career, and I started to pay attention to what are some of the other job functions or responsibilities or skill sets that I've been using that actually really energize me and excite me. And I noticed that it was when I got to train or orient employees, or when I got to talk to employees about their development or their career growth, or if they were like, hey, I really think I want to apply for this job, even friends, like not just whatever job I had, but maybe friends in my circle. I had a lot of friends who would come to me like, hey, Maria, can you look at my resume? Like I was like the resume review queen for a lot of years. And but I loved it. I enjoyed it. And I actually was teaching, I think this was, at this point, I think I was at Clinton. Or no, I was transitioning from Pine Harbor to the hospital, but I was teaching at Clinton Community College leadership development classes.
Nice. I didn't know you did that.
I did. Yeah.
How long did you do that?
It was like a year kind of thing, because it was before Rosie was born.
Gotcha.
So then once I had Rosie, I had to cut that out.
Reprioritize.
Yeah.
That's okay.
But it was so much fun. And I really enjoyed the group of people that would come out to the classes. It was, we had a lot of local companies that would send like batches of their supervisors to these trainings. It was part of their workforce development group. So they were like the non-credit classes. And I would be like, in the evenings teaching these classes. And it was so much fun. I so enjoyed it.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So
you had these little indicators along the way that maybe I'm really a learning and development person.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So I guess I'm curious. I mean, I feel like I've found my career, and I'm 29, found it in the 20s, but almost.
You're like 29 and a half.
Yeah, 29 and a half. But, I guess I want to dive into the decision-making process that you made about that, because it just seems like career planning is such a hard thing for people, because it's hard. Well, I guess back to what you said earlier, it's hard to admit what you want or say what you want.
I think career planning is only as hard as you make it. I think people sometimes think that they have to come up with this long, elaborate career plan. And I'm not suggesting that. I'm suggesting that you start off small. If you're in a position where you're like, okay, I just took this job because I needed it, but I want to grow, I want to transition, I want to move forward. So start small. And we don't always have to leap into a degree program, right? There's so many more short-term sort of educational goals that you can pursue, like a certification, or go for a one-day seminar, or read a great book. I mean, there's so many things that you can do to give yourself little nuggets of education and knowledge. And every time you go to a conference or a workshop or a seminar, what happens? You meet other people.
Yep.
And you network, and you start having interesting conversations that you never would have had if you didn't go. And then you're like, this person has this job function. I didn't even know this job existed.
Yeah, right.
And then you're like, that sounds really cool. Spend time on job boards. I think there's a lot of value. The internet is a wealth of knowledge and information. So if you're kind of like, I don't even know what I'm inspired by, go look on job boards, see what kind of job descriptions are out there. It might help inspire some thought on something that's interesting to you. The Society for Human Resources Management, SHRM, SHRM,
Yep.
is another great resource if you're just trying to kind of spin the wheels on ideas. There's so many industries you can go into, right? I mean, we talked a lot about healthcare because I'm living in the healthcare world, but living here in the North Country, we know that there's a ton of tech and engineering and the whole, like with Clinton, right? We have that whole science and engineering program. There's manufacturing is alive and well here. So there's so many other industries in this area that you can certainly pursue opportunities. And it's thinking beyond what the actual industry is, right? Because each industry, despite whether it's healthcare, manufacturing, or senior care, whatever, but there's also this whole business support side, right? They're all businesses that still need to function. So is there other functions within a business that are intriguing or interesting to you? So it's just exposing yourself, getting yourself out there. Go to an 80 KYP mixer, get to know the people that are there, and learn about their jobs and what they're doing. There's no way that you could really even decide what you want to do if you don't really know what kind of options are even out there. And I think it's also important, again, to go back and admit to the things that you actually want, list those things out, and also don't be scared to brag about yourself. Even if it's like in a journal format, maybe you're not saying it to anybody else but yourself, but talk about your strengths. Think about, what are my strengths? What are things that bring me joy? What are things that give me energy? Even if it's pieces of your job, maybe it's pieces of your personal life, like your wife coaches, right?
Yep.
So that's maybe something that outside of work gives her joy and energy.
Yep.
So it's really trying to focus and think about what are the positive elements and aspects of my life, and then how do I start to piece these things together?
I can tell you're an expert in this.
I don't know about expert, but
an ever growing and evolving expert. Like you're obviously there's always personal mastery in a subject area, but I can tell this is definitely something where you're adding some value to employees at CVPH.
And here's my thing with the term expert. I don't feel anyone is ever an expert. I feel like we always have room for growth.
I like that.
And the world is constantly changing and evolving around us. So if we can embrace a learner and growth mindset and not just say, I'm an expert and that's it.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm always cautious with the word expert.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're going to be continuing to get closer to expertise, as close as you can someday. I mean, long term, I don't know, 20 years down the road or maybe more. What's the future for expertise or close to it for Maria look like?
I would say, so my next education-wise goal is to obtain a coaching certification.
Oh, interesting.
And something along the lines of more like professional development coaching, career coaching, maybe executive leadership coaching. I think that's sort of in my future. I really feel passionate and excited about not just career growth and development, but also leadership development. That's another piece of it. And then I don't know. I mean, I'm pregnant, so I'm kind of like, let's have a baby in September and maybe enjoy some family time and reacquaint, back to a normal life now that school's done. But yeah, long term, I think I see myself more developing into more of this official or formal coaching role.
Do you have any big mentors in your field of study? Like any authors or people that you look up to that you maybe they're local or maybe I don't know that you would aspire to be or you gain industry inspiration from? I don't know. Did I put you on the spot?
No, my brain, I have
or are there
20
too many?
million.
I feel like I saw your eyelids flipping through your Rolodex.
I draw a ton of inspiration from, there's so many resources within my sphere that you're right, are just like flipping through my brain. If I think about on the internet, like LinkedIn, TED Talks.
Yep.
School was a huge influence for me. I had a lot of really amazing professors who all have PhDs and coaching certifications. And so I drew a lot of inspiration from them. One of my professors who taught 2 of my classes, coincidentally, is also a coaching / consultant and does work for UVM Health Network on the Vermont side.
Oh, wow.
So there was actually like a cross of our worlds. And she's been an amazing person. Also on the Vermont side, we're connecting more so with other learning and development team members. And there's some amazing backgrounds and experience and folks who I'm just super excited to be able to draw inspiration from and learn from. And on this side too, I mean, my boss who hired me on at CVPH, she now retired, but Julie Brunell was a huge advocate of lifelong learning, and she really built and started the learning and development team at CVPH.
Oh, wow.
So our team is sort of her legacy. She's been a huge inspiration. And I'll be honest with you, a lot of the employees at CVPH are a huge inspiration to me because, like I said, I'm the one that they come to when they're like, I want to go back to school. So I've seen the working full-time employee who has multiple children, who's taking care of an aging loved one, juggling crazy shifts, overtime, nighttime shifts, and finishing a degree. And you know what I mean? So it's like, wow. I mean, the amount of compassion and energy and excitement, and it's like, how do you not feel inspired?
You obviously pulled together the gumption to complete your master's degree with everything you have going on, but then you think of also what they've done too with the things they see on a daily basis, or especially, in ER or serious other. It's amazing to see everybody's different stories.
Yeah,
that's why I wanted to do the podcast. I feel like I have nothing more to gain than just have great conversations with people that are inspiring, like yourself.
Thank you. Well, this is really fun.
Yeah. It looks like we're 52 minutes into this sucker. So they've been going about an hour, hour and 15 minutes. I want to give you an opportunity to plug yourself.
Okay.
If you had any advice, any final advice that you would share with the listeners about career planning or coaching or anything we've talked about, what would you say?
Don't overwhelm yourself, and start with thinking about what brings you joy and energy, and notice who are mentors around you, because I think that's another neglected focus, something that we just don't realize, that we have mentors around us. We have people that we go to for advice. We just don't officially call them a mentor. We just think, oh, they're just so-and-so, right? A family member or a coworker. Not even just, it doesn't have to be your boss or direct supervisor. It could be just someone in your life. So acknowledging that you have these mentor relationships and utilizing them, tap into them. I have certainly used mentors in my life. And I've also been a mentor for a lot of people. And that's a completely voluntary role. It's something that I enjoy doing. If I can help someone, even in my personal life, not just professionally, if I can help someone move past a stuck phase or a stage of life, I'm happy to be that support person. Those are things that bring me joy and give me energy. If it means that it's going to help you get out of, the career rut that you're maybe in. And, this is like something I'm like, all right, Maria, take your own advice. And I'm sure this is may sound cliche to a lot of people, but practicing gratitude This is something I actually really do want to try to focus on, and practicing positive deviance in our lives, because it is very easy to focus on the negative and focus on what doesn't work and no but can't. It's so easy to do that. But every time, there's some really great articles out there, and there's some really great neuroscience research that you cannot simultaneously have a positive and a negative thought at the same time. Our brains physically cannot do it.
Interesting.
So if you're flooding your brain with positive thoughts,
Yep.
then you can't have negative thoughts.
That sounds so simple, but it makes sense. It makes total sense.
So when you're doing things like practicing gratitude or writing some positive thoughts down, focusing on your strengths, things like that, that's how you actually move yourself forward. And so these are small, simple, little things that you think like, all right, that's like tofu hippie, way out in the clouds thinking. But there's a lot of really great neuroscience and research and validity behind these few simple things that I'm suggesting. And you can certainly Google it. Yeah.
No, I probably will now, because I'm like, wow, that's crazy. Fun fact about me. Yeah. So I actually was a bio major, and I was going to be a teacher, but I focused my classes in neuroscience. So
okay, so I just struck like a geek out.
It's like I want to go read it now. But back in the day, yeah, there's actually two people, in the same role as me, myself and another guy who graduated from St. Lawrence at Hickok and Boardman right now. We were both in the same neuroscience classes. And now we're both commercial insurance brokers. Funny.
It's applicable everywhere you go.
Yeah, interesting. And your point about mentorship, oh my gosh, that can't say that enough. I mean, for me, having positive mentors has been honestly a privilege that I've had, because at least when I was younger, I had positive mentors that totally shaped and guided me to who I am without me asking or realizing. And now as I'm older and matured, I definitely recognize the value of identifying mentors that you look up to and can aspire to learn from and be like. So
right, absolutely.
Yeah, that's huge. Are you ready?
Okay. What's next?
It's so funny. Sometimes I'm just like jonesing for the opportunity to get to the rapid fire section, because I love it so much. But I have some rapid fire questions for you. You ready?
Oh gosh. Okay.
I feel like maybe I should come up with a fancy like jingle or something for this part of the podcast. Yeah. Exactly. Question number 1.
Okay.
You don't have to answer them like Jeopardy. You just answer. Okay.
What is?
Yeah. Pretty simple. What is a book that you would gift to somebody, and why?
A book that I tend to, and I have gifted on numerous occasions. It probably depends on who it is, my audience.
Sure. I kind of left it a little open for you, but you can define the audience.
So a book that I have gifted and do reference a lot in my life is Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg.
Writing it down.
Yep. Go ahead and write that one down.
Lean In. Tell me about this book.
Lean In. So Sheryl Sandberg shares her journey through her career, through and moving into Facebook. But she shares some really great career perspective and advice on the importance of the concept of leaning in is having presence at that table. So when you're at that big boardroom, conference room table, envision yourself in a meeting. Don't just sit back in the corner or opt to sit in the extra chair on the side of the wall. No, have a seat at the table, lean into the conversation. Don't just even physically imagine yourself physically leaning in, and that metaphorical concept is then kind of transferred into many other aspects on how you can lean in to not just a conversation, but decreasing that wage gap. Right? We talk about why men are paid more than women, and there's so many theories behind it or research behind it. So it's really empowering women to balance career with family life, long gone are those days that you can't have kids and a career. That was for me, this book was so pivotal because I did grow up in that mentality of you can't have kids and family and a career. That was like reading this book totally changed my perspective.
Awesome. That's awesome.
And there's even an example in there where she talks about someone that she managed on her team who was like young and in their 20s and like came into her office totally stressed out about, I don't know how I'm going to juggle career and children. And Cheryl sits her down and she's like, so are you dating anyone? And she's like, no. So you're not getting married or like you're not at that point where you're having kids? Are you pregnant? And she's like, no. So she wasn't even at the stage of actually like thinking about having kids or anything, but she was just in this fearful panic of I'm going to have to choose between having a family and children and career. And so that, like, to me, that was like, ding, 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 ding. Oh my God, I've been living in that space. And it's not just for women. I think it's a great book for men to read too.
Yeah. But certainly, that level of inequality and social structure that has led to stress like that for people. That's awesome.
Great book.
I wrote the book down.
It's a really great read. Your wife will like it too if she hasn't read it already.
Maybe would you gift it to me? I don't know. Okay. I love it. Off to a good start.
Okay.
Question number 2. What advice would you give to your 18-year-old self?
Ooh, my 18-year-old self.
Now knowing what you know. Tough one, I know.
Ooh, 18-year-old self.
I know.
Go live wild and crazier before you get married and have kids. No, I don't know. I lived a really wild and crazy life. I don't know. Because I'm like, ooh, I wouldn't want anything to change my path.
Yeah, it's true.
I'm kind of like cool where I'm at.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I don't know that I want to like, I'd have to think about that. That's a ponder one. You're stumping me here.
That's fine. 1-1. No, just kidding. No, you know what? That's actually, that says a lot. That says a lot about you and your family and what you've done for yourself, that you don't want anything to go different. So I don't have anything to say. That's good. Or at least in the moment, you know.
Tomorrow morning, I'll be like, oh, that's what I could have said.
It's all good. Here's a fun one. Take price out of the equation, but if you could put up a billboard or a massive sign in Times Square or in a very high traffic public place, what would your billboard say?
For like, it would be like for me,
that you now have access to a billboard or the Times Square TV, whatever you want to envision, but you can put anything on it.
Anything?
Anything. It doesn't have to be a career focused thing. It could be, but what would you want to put on a billboard for the world to read or see?
Maybe because this is relevant in my life at the moment, but if I could do a billboard, it would say something like, assume good intent. Don't believe everything you see on Facebook.
Yes. I wish the listeners could have seen you like just deliver that. What she had.
I'm Sicilian, so like my hands are always moving.
She's got the hand out and she's looking into the clouds, and as she says it, that was epic. And that's a great message. Honestly, that's man. I think Mark Hamilton also simplified basically the same message, and he just is like, don't be a dick.
Yeah. Like that's, yes, actually I'd like to change my answer.
I'll let Mark know that you agreed. Two votes for don't be a dick. Yeah. Excellent. Yeah. Okay, this is the final one. This is my favorite question. I always tee it up, and I've gotten some great answers. I'm putting you on the spot again.
Okay. Now I'm a little nervous.
If we could assemble a board of directors for Maria Latinville, for your life, to guide and coach you and advise you through the rest of your life, who would the 3 people be on your board of directors? They can be alive, dead, famous or not. It can be anybody. But who would the 3 people be and why?
You're really making me think deep today. All right. 3 people. So let's see. If board of directors, I want to think of like mind, body, and spirit, right? People who are going to guide me in those 3 areas.
There you go. Yeah, that's a good way to go.
I'll take that approach. So I'm going to go with Mama D, who's my mom, my one and only mama. She's like the spiritual Sicilian mama of all mamas, and
love it.
And she knows me pretty well, so I feel like she would make some good decisions as a board of director of my life, because I think she already has.
Yeah, she
kind
de
of
facto board of director automatically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see. So she covers the spiritual part, the mind part. Oof. All right, maybe I'll go local. I'll go with one of my coworkers, Zadie Laughlin, who is, if anyone knows Zadie, knows that she's probably one of the most amazing human beings that there is on this planet, and she is a mentor to me, and she's someone who I have the honor of working with every day, and she has guided me through a lot of mental process, and she would be a wonderful person to have on my board of directors. So mind and spirit,
Love
now
it.
body.
Love it.
So I'm going to go famous. I'm thinking like, who do I follow on social media? This may sound Pink.
There you go.
Pink is like, she's badass. She's got babies. She's juggling it all. She tells people to suck it with their crappy parenting,
Yep.
All their feedback that they have on social media. And she's like the one who's like, give me a break, people.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not killing my child. Like, I love her approach. She's so inspirational. And she's super active.
Oh, yeah.
She's like super athletic. So I really look up to her as a female role model. I think she's just amazing. So I think those would be my 3.
That's fantastic.
I got it.
That's fantastic. I love it. That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, this has been great. This has been a great conversation.
Thank you.
I'm going to have you on again because maybe for Stories of Gumption or just for more personal therapy. Maybe, I don't know, but this has been good. I feel like ready to take on the world. But
maybe next time I'll interview you.
Yes. Guest host Maria Latinville hosting Stories of Gumption, and the guest will be me.
Yeah. Well, have you shared your story of gumption?
I haven't.
So there we go.
Yeah, there we go. We could do that. That would be fun. That would be a lot of fun. And then, maybe at that point we can see what the world has to bring. But this has been great.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and certainly hold you in high regard.
Thank you.
Now, after learning what you've accomplished with your master's degree, the knowledge base that you're bringing back to CVPH, I hold you even higher. It's like, holy smokes, she's just crushing it.
Thank you.
Good for you.
Thank you.
Everybody, I want to thank you for listening. If you've tuned in, this is episode 11. We're at lucky number 11. And special shout out to Kavanaugh Realty for their sponsorship, doing great things. # local matters. And also Open Gate Farmstead. Give them a ring on social media. They'll give you some eggs. They're fantastic. And if it's your first order ever, let them know that you heard about them from the Gumption podcast, and they'll give you $1 off. It's worth it. Check it out. Thanks again, Maria.
Thank you.
See ya.